Well, on Monday of this week, the stock market rallied because of sentiment that inflation data would be not so bad and all these feelings, like causing real world economics. Today, we got the inflation data for August, and it is still so bad. So markets tanked on bad feelings.
But I thought President Biden said we're out of this. There is no such thing as inflation. We don't have a recession. Everything is okay.
Well, let's go for the numbers.
Gas prices have gone down more than they have in the history of the world.
Yes.
The past, few months?
Right.
Okay. I mean, certain goods are up and down, right? The consumer price index, though, overall is at 8.3%. Economists were hoping for 8.1%. That's why those bad feelings. This means that you are spending 8.3% more for all the things that you normally buy, all things being equal. So here's a chart of what we've been through this year. Whew. We've been through this collectively. This feels like it hurt, right? This looks like it feels. What's that expression? You look how I feel.
You look how I feel.
That's what this is, right?
You look how I don't know. You look good. I feel like shit. So I don't know
you say that to someone when they're like looking haggard. Like,
oh, you look how I feel.
That's what I'm going to say to this chart. Okay. So we've been some hard places, but 9.1% was our peak in June. And economists were hoping, because you see, there is this downward trend. It's not very steep. We don't know, right? So 8.3% is our number, and the market's having a temper tantrum right now. Is this a sign, though, that inflation has peaked, or are we on the downward trajectory? Well, is policy changing?
I haven't seen any. I mean, I know. They did pass the Inflation Reduction Act. By the way, I loved how Janet Yellen described it just 2 days ago. She said, we just passed the Inflation Reduction Act. It's going to do amazing things to help our climate.
Okay. We will have those numbers. They will not be factored into August's number because it wasn't passed at the time, right? But then also they may tell us, oh, no, it's not working yet when we start to get these month by month inflationary numbers. Remember that inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. So who has too much money? The government. Certainly not the people, right?
Yeah. When you print $8 trillion and you dump it on top of an economy during a pandemic, something is going to give, right?
Right. We knew this.
Some would argue Ukraine has a lot, too.
Yes. I don't know how much goods they have, but there's a lot of money. Consumer goods are a big part of this.
Yeah.
Here is CNBC's Rick Santelli saying, I told you so.
Is going to discuss this. The thing that really bothers me with regard to inflation is everybody here on this panel agreed months ago that one of the reasons inflation was high was all the government spending. And after we agreed on that, what did the government do? They spent more. Student loans, welfare in terms of the CHIPS Act. Seems like nothing is sinking in. These numbers aren't better than expected, and maybe they should be, and maybe ultimately they're going to start to go back up again because we continue to go back to that well of debt and spending.
Okay, so he mentions the CHIPS Act, right? Student loan relief, but only for some, which we talked about, will cost taxpayers billions. Military spending, he doesn't mention that, which is through the roof, not for members of the military. Obviously, they just got a piddly raise, but weapons makers are cashing in. He doesn't mention the Inflation Reduction Act, which, again, we don't have the numbers on yet. And if the numbers don't pan out to reduce inflation, they'll tell us, oh, no, it takes some time, right?
I mean, how in the world is the Inflation Reduction Act, which spends billions on climate change legislation and is just a boondoggle for weapons manufacturers, I don't know how in the world it's going to spending more money to reduce inflation. It makes absolutely no sense. And they went along with it. And
that's
people
that's the Keynesian model.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, right. Spend more to reduce inflation. Like, where did you go to school to learn this stuff? And then people buy it. I mean, maybe that's why President Biden's approval ratings have gone up.
But that's why we have these big to-do about interest rates, right? Because the only thing the government seems willing to do is manipulate interest rates. The same thing's happening in Europe. In the UK, they were poised to raise interest rates. They say now they won't do that until the 10 days of mourning are up for the Queen, because you can't even think about the economy.
Yeah, don't even,
because you're in mourning, right?
Yeah, you're so in mourning, you can't even think about paying your groceries or your rent or anything.
Yeah. So about those too few goods, right, and too much money, hold on to your butts, because UPS and railway workers are about to strike in the United States. So those few goods are going to get even fewer. A 30-day moratorium for the strike between the union and the railway system ends.
57,000 conductors and engineers going to strike.
So it ends on Friday, and they say they are willing to walk off the job if they can't resolve the dispute around quality of life concerns. What do they want? They want to not be on call 24/7 every week of the year, which is how they have been working for the last several years. That will absolutely affect everyone, because 40% of the goods that are delivered to your neighborhood from a distance, which most of us do not only buy local things. I once read this study that said that if you tried to get a hamburger made locally, you could not do it no matter where you live, because every piece of a hamburger has to be shipped from somewhere. Every bit of the hamburger does not grow in one location.
So if you wanted like the tomatoes or the beef,
the lettuce,
everything
the bun, the mayonnaise, the ketchup, like you there's absolutely no way to make a local hamburger with all the things that we're used to.
We can do that here with the farmer's market. I've done it.
Well, we can do that here. There's actually there's
not all year round. You can't though, right?
No.
Yeah.
No,
so
there's the beef we can.
With the beef, well, I guess, maybe the beef, but then again, if you want the tomatoes
and the grain for the bread,
like if you want really delicious,
is the grain locally grown?
New Jersey tomatoes, you're not going to get it during the winter, I guess, unless they're shipped from some greenhouse.
Anyway, I digest, but I digest.
I digest hamburgers.
I'd like a hamburger.
Yeah.
I digest. Well,
I'm a hamburger. What is that Popeye character?
Blimpy.
I'll gladly pay
That's
for a hamburger today.
Let's get back to the story. Stop digesting.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, 40% of the goods that are delivered to your neighborhood come from a distance by rail. So unless you grow your own or you make your own or whatever, that means that things you were used to coming your way will slow down significantly this year. Start knitting your Christmas sweaters. This depressing economic situation is made even worse when you consider that layoffs this season are about to hit harder than they have in years past. Now, a few weeks ago, Clayton brought this up about big rounds of layoffs. And I thought, no, because we've had an employer's market, right? Employees market where people just simply chose not to work after the pandemic. That does seem to be happening. Listen to CNBC explain why this domino effect is about to begin.
Why don't we start with the details? What's happening here, what you heard?
Sure. So Goldman Sachs has historically laid off what they call, effectively, they're underperformers, the bottom 1% to 5% of the workforce. They put that program on pause during the pandemic, partially because it was a pandemic, but also, as you are well aware, the deal-making frenzy was just out of control. They had too much work and not enough bodies. And not only did they not lay off people, they hired people. But we've really turned a chapter right now in the deal-making environment. David Solomon said in the last earnings call that Goldman had that, the pipeline has slowed. I'm certainly hearing that from the bankers that I talked to. And so Goldman is reinstating the program, and they're going to be laying off probably closer to 1% of the workforce than 5%. But it's still significant because it's really telling us, where we are right now in the economic environment and how these CEOs of banks are viewing the year ahead. And they are effectively conceding it's not going to be as good from a deal-making perspective as it has been for the past 2 years.
So bankers.
Yeah.
Are being laid off.
Not just bankers, though. Bed Bath & Beyond just had a big round of layoffs, although corporate staff, not store staff, since the holidays are coming. And
that's what we were saying, right? So you're going to see January, February is going to be a shit show. I mean, that's where the real predictions lie, right?
Yes.
We're going to ramp up for some holiday retail staff, and that'll affect numbers. January, February, get ready for the bottom to fall out. But I mean, I think this is really troubling when you already have banks laying people off. Like, since when do banks lay people off?
Right. And a lot of these are luxury brands. For instance, Peloton is bleeding money and has to lay off. And now just their CEO and several members of the senior staff has been either stepped down or they were asked to step down. Rent the Runway was kind of a Wall Street darling for a while. Now they're laying off 24% of their workforce. Netflix, Remax, Snap. So some are saying that what we are seeing now is being called a white collar recession.
People in the chat are saying that in UK, I just saw somebody from the UK saying a ton of banks have closed in the UK. So yeah, you're seeing it. David, you were going to say?
Well, and I was going to say that I think maybe they watched the show yesterday because they're laying off and getting people out of there so that they don't make more than crypto environmental impact.
Right, yeah.
Yes, that's
we
got to
got
be
to hurry
it.
up and get out of here and make it so that we're not bigger than crypto with our footprint because they're going to end up, coming after us next.
Yeah, that'll be the case. I'm sure the government will come after them. I have to say, I think it's interesting, the bankers closing. I think you're going to start to see this as, well, I mean, the Goldman Sachs piece is interesting. We didn't go into it, but they're betting how they bet on the subprime borrower market. They went through, and instead of what got them into the 2008, 2009 collapse, which was subprime mortgage market, Goldman Sachs specifically was betting on giving out credit cards to subprime lenders. So if you had a lower FICO score, they partnered with Apple to bring you the Apple card, right? And the thing was that, like, basically anybody could get a credit card. If your FICO score is not that good, it doesn't really matter. Like, we're just going to bet on these people now. So they were betting on this economy where it didn't matter if you had a low credit score, things were fine, economy's good, chugging along. And now these people have enormous amounts of debt. They can't pay back their loans. They can't pay back their credit cards. They can't pay their rent. A huge swath of the American population is behind on energy bills. So now you're starting to see these pieces in place and starting to fall.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll see, how these two things are related. Is high inflation, right? A strike of delivery workers, both rail and trucking and plane, if UPS strike happens, and then people losing their jobs. So that is kind of life as we know it in big disruption.
I would love to hear from our audience. Are you experiencing layoffs in your area? Of course, we were hearing this is the best job market in history, right? We were hearing this from the Biden administration. But now we're seeing this.